Indeed, India's Akshay joins us for more. Good afternoon, Akshay. Now, in a latest statement, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian apologized on Saturday to the neighboring countries for attacks launched during the Islamic Republic's war with Israel and the US. Tell us more on this.
Well, Deepika, yes, the president of Iran has, in fact, apologized to the neighboring countries as far as the constant attacks that have been carried out by Iran in the initial days of the conflict, immediately after the death of the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. That was a sort of retaliatory action that was taken by Iran, and because it sought a sort of revenge, against the Israeli as well as U.S. forces, it launched an attack not only on the assets of Israel and U.S. but the infrastructure that they have, especially the military infrastructure in the neighboring Gulf countries as well. And there are several countries that house U.S. bases. Bahrain has the fifth fleet of the U.S. Navy. And there is a lot of infrastructure that was on the target of the government of Iran. However, there was also collateral damage, and perhaps that's the reason why the Iranian president has to apologize to the countries, because increasingly we were seeing that flight disruptions, people were staying at home, they were not able to get out, and the situation was getting out of hand in these countries as well, especially the economies are plummeting to new lows. So that was the case. However, the president has also said one thing that is quite important, that they will not attack the neighboring countries unless there is an attack orchestrated from their soil. So that essentially puts a lot of pressure on the Gulf nations, especially those are housing the U.S. bases, especially the countries that are facilitating in a way the military of the United States of America in their country, and helping them orchestrate attacks on the Iranian targets, especially across the country, especially the missile infrastructure that they have. So yes, there is a statement, there is an apology, but also there is a condition. And it was recently reported on Al Jazeera News that Qatar had. In fact, the newsroom of Al Jazeera had, beeps, those alerts that they have on their cell phones, even after that apology. So it essentially means that while, yes, there is an apology and there is a statement made by the president, but still it's not 100% that the attacks will stop or have stopped.
And earlier this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin also held a telephonic conversation with Pezeshkian. How do you see this move in the light of developing situation, adding on to the point that you just mentioned?
Well, Deepika, if one country has gotten, I will not say profit or will not say advantage, but some good news with this conflict opening up is Russia. It was increasingly coming under pressure. Economically, military-wise, from the sort of sanctions that the U.S. was, putting on the countries that were doing business with Russia, or the missiles that were, constantly being supplied to Ukraine, and the infrastructure that was being supplied not only just by U.S. but by European countries as well. And the opening of this new conflict has helped, the Russian war machinery a lot, especially given the fact that many of these missiles are now being redirected to Israel, to the U.S. assets there. UK has sent more of fighter jets, their Typhoons, to their Qatari base. So infrastructure now is being diverted to the Middle East, to the West Asian region, and that has given a massive breather to the Russian forces there who are operating in Ukraine. So it seems that it will be in benefit of Russia for this, for Iran to continuously retaliate, to keep a pressure on the Western forces, because if this conflict gets over, then there will be a renewed push from the US and Western side to sort of re-engage with the Russians that are fighting the Ukrainians there in that part of the world.
Also, Akshay, foreign ministers of the Arab League will hold an emergency meeting on Sunday to discuss the Iranian attacks. What role can Arab League play in the current West Asia crisis?
Can you repeat that question, Deepika?
I'm asking that the Arab League leaders are also set to hold a meeting on Sunday, which is tomorrow. What role can they really play in the ongoing geopolitical tensions which are currently unfolding in the West Asia?
Well, it remains to be seen, especially given the fact that the Iranian president has apologized to these countries who are seeing oil prices going up, who are seeing their business not getting through. 90% of food to the UAE comes from shipping routes, and since the Strait of Hormuz is closed, since there is a lot of tension going on in that part of the world, tankers not getting through, there is a real crisis emerging in these countries that are dependent on sea routes, shipping lanes. To provide the basic facilities to these countries, and they will have to retaliate in some way or the another. There were calls coming in that production of oil should be stopped, oil prices should shoot up, or for the world to come to its senses, for the conflict to be resolved as soon as possible. But now it remains to be seen that what directive will the GCC countries will come up with, because the situation is right now about their existence as countries there. Because if the economies go down, there can be political crisis, there can be revolutions there in those part of the world as well, with many of the kingdoms there. So there really is a threat to these countries as well, and there can be drastic measures announced tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much, Akshay, for joining us and getting us the latest on this.